Friends, this is the story of a woman who was driven by poverty to cross all limits and lost her sense of right and wrong. Hearing it will surely leave you astonished. So make sure you listen to the end. A young and beautiful woman herself made me such an offer that I simply couldn't refuse. I glanced at my fair and plump mistress, whose face held a smile and whose eyes sparkled. How could I say no to her? So I smiled back at her offer. She then took my hand and led me to her room. As soon as she made me lie down on the bed, I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body because she started unbuttoning my shirt herself. In no time, she removed my shirt and tossed it aside. She then looked into my eyes and smiled deeply. Before I could reach out and pull her closer, she stepped back and said, "I have something special for you. You must use it first. Only then will I come close to you, and I will give you happiness that will leave you amazed." She opened her wardrobe, took something out, and brought it over while keeping it hidden in her hands. She said, "I feel shy showing this to you, but using it is essential. It will make our bond even stronger and show you just how powerful and strong your mistress really is." Saying this, she revealed the item to me and I began sweating. I recognized it well, an item I always kept hidden from my wife. It was something that, once used, made any man feel very strong for a short while. The mistress not only introduced it to me without my consent, but she also applied it all over my body. After some time, I started to feel uneasy, and my cries broke out. The mistress tried to calm me down, whispering softly in my ear, "So many men use this. So what's the issue with you?" After 4 hours passed, the mistress told me something that shook me to my core. After that night, I was no longer the same. It was 10 o'clock at night, and I had come, as I did every night, to deliver milk to the mistress. She was a fair, tall woman who would drink half a liter of milk by herself. The mistress often asked me to bring her something along with the milk, something I felt very shy delivering. I would carefully hide it and deliver it to her discreetly. I never understood why she wanted this item, which was meant for men, nor why she needed it since she lived alone. Still, I never dared ask her directly. After all, she paid me, so I didn't concern myself with who used the item or how. Occasionally, curiosity would spark within me. Did the mistress use it herself, and if so, how? I had never seen a woman purchasing such an item, and that was what puzzled me. Yet the world is changing and advancing so much that I figured perhaps women had now found some way to use it too. And then one night, the mistress made me use that same item in exchange for half a kilo of milk. And I was shocked, because after that, the mistress played such a game with me continuously for 4 hours that I didn't even have the strength left to stand. The mistress turned out to be very bold. I could never have imagined that someone who appeared so simple, straightforward, and respectable could have such courage within her. Because that masculine item, the mistress herself, with her own hands, I had a small, well-known milk shop in the neighborhood. A while back, the mistress had come to my shop and told me to deliver milk to her house daily because she was a single woman. Therefore, she used to take half a kilo of milk from me every night, and I was the one who had to go to her house to deliver it. This mistress of mine was not only young and beautiful, but she was also quite healthy. The mistress had only been living in the neighborhood for a month, and we had developed a very good rapport because we met every day. The mistress was a cheerful woman who always smiled. Whenever I went to her house, she would immediately open the door and invite me inside. Then I would go to the kitchen, open my milk container, and pour the milk into her pot. The mistress would hand me the payment for the half kilo of milk right then and there. This routine continued in the same way. One day when I went to deliver milk to the mistress's house, I saw her crying. It was the first time I saw tears in her eyes, and she seemed very sad. Her hair was disheveled, and she was sitting right in front of me without her dupatta. I asked her if everything was okay. At first, she hesitated, and then she said that her husband had married someone else in Qatar and was now saying he wouldn't return. Hearing this, the mistress broke down into tears, and I felt deeply sorry for her. I already knew she lived alone, but I hadn't known where her husband was. That day, the mistress herself revealed to me that her husband was overseas, and even more shocking was that he had remarried abroad. I was astonished. How could any man leave such a beautiful wife and marry another woman? I tried to comfort the mistress and told her, "It's only a matter of time. Your husband will come back. Don't be so upset. These overseas marriages don't usually last long. Hearing this, the mistress wiped her tears. She said, I've been living alone for the past 2 years, sometimes in this rented house, sometimes in another. When my husband left for overseas, my in-laws made my life so miserable that I left their house. My brother and sister-in-law didn't let me stay at my parents' house, so I started living in rented houses. Even now, I've only been here for a month, and everyone keeps asking me about my husband. I'm tired of answering them. After my marriage, I only spent 15 days with my husband, and now, 2 years after the wedding, my arms are still empty. I was waiting for my husband to return so that my household would feel complete. I spend every night tossing and turning, unable to sleep, but I don't know what witch has ensnared my husband and ruined my home. Tears welled up in the mistress's eyes once again. I felt a lot of sympathy for her and said, whenever you need me, just call me. I'll help you with your chores. The mistress brought the milk pot very close to me and said, I have so many needs. Which ones will you fulfill? Living alone is so difficult, you probably don't even realize it. The mistress sighed deeply, and it felt as if my own breath had stopped. Her nearness was melting me. While saying this, the mistress looked at me in such a strange way that my heart began to race. I quickly poured the milk into the pot and left her house. For the first time, I realized she was alone and needed someone's company. I felt a sheen of sweat forming on my forehead. Whenever I went to deliver milk, I would sit with her for a while, trying to cheer her up. Ever since the news of her husband's second marriage arrived, the mistress had become quite free with me. She would ask me a lot of questions about myself, and I would happily tell her everything. I didn't hide anything from her, and even told her I was married. Over time, this was how our friendship began. Then one day she said something to me that left me astonished. The mistress asked me to bring her an item along with the milk, something I sold at my shop, but always kept very discreetly. Most of my customers who bought it were men. I couldn't fathom why she suddenly needed it. I wondered how she even knew about it, as I thought there was no man in her life. While men would occasionally purchase the item from me along with their milk, I was curious how the mistress had become aware of it. Noticing my changing expression, she smiled and explained, when I first came to your shop, I saw a man buying that item from you. That's when I realized you sold it alongside the milk. I was glad to see that people could obtain it so easily from you. Otherwise, going elsewhere to get it would be embarrassing. And everyone would find out. Hearing this, I felt my face flushed with embarrassment. I had never imagined a woman would talk to me about such things. Hesitantly, I asked her what she needed it for. She gave me a piercing look and replied, just because my husband betrayed me doesn't mean I have to mourn him for the rest of my life. I have a life of my own, and I want to be happy again. For that, I need this item. When the right time comes, I'll tell you how I'll use it. She handed me the money, so I had no reason to object. Every other day, I began delivering the item to her along with the milk. She seemed very pleased with me. Occasionally, she would even hand me a glass of juice. I would drink it while watching her intently. She knew very well how closely I looked at her, but she never stopped me or made an effort to cover herself. This only emboldened me further. Since I started bringing her the item, I began keeping an eye on her house. I thought there must be some man visiting her, which would explain why she needed that item. After all, in my mind, no woman could use it. But the strange thing was that no man ever showed up at her house. No matter how much I watched, I never saw anyone come or go. It truly seemed like there was no man in her life. My shop was situated at the corner of my street, a prominent dairy store known in the neighborhood. My shop was quite popular in the neighborhood and always busy with customers. Whoever came to buy milk from me once would return again, even if they had to come from far away. I hardly ever delivered milk to anyone's house, and one of the few exceptions was my mistress. Despite keeping an eye on everything, I couldn't figure it out. Over time, the hesitation between me and the mistress disappeared, and we started talking openly. She would share all her household problems with me without hesitation, and I would help her solve them. Eventually, the mistress abandoned her sense of modesty. She would often come in front of me, dressed in a way that made me lower my gaze in embarrassment. Sometimes my heart would falter. The mistress had a good figure, and since she regularly drank half a liter of milk, her complexion was very fair. When she appeared before me in revealing clothing and placed the milk pot in front of me, I would lose my composure. It took a great effort to maintain self-control, and I would quickly leave her presence. I was a married man with a wife and 2 children, and I was very happy with my married life. Perhaps that's why I wanted to keep my distance from the mistress. But when a woman herself offers something to a man, it's difficult for any man to resist. One night, something similar happened to me. When I went to deliver milk, I found her crying. When I asked what was wrong, she suddenly embraced me and started crying uncontrollably. Even though I didn't want to, I placed my hand on her back and pulled her closer. A fire of emotions was ignited within me. After a while, she told me that her husband had sent her divorce papers, and now she was completely alone. She didn't even have money for her expenses. Whatever little money she had to make do with that. Hearing this, I became concerned. I tried to offer her some money, but she flatly refused. She said, "I am a respectable woman. I can't accept money from you." I tried to persuade her, but she wouldn't agree. After sitting with her for a while, I went back home. The next day, when I went to deliver milk, she refused to take it and said, "I don't have the money anymore. Please don't bring me any milk from now on." Her face was red, as though she had been crying for a long time. Hearing this, I became worried and told her that the money didn't matter. I could give her the milk for free. But she didn't agree. When I insisted further, she said something that made my heart race. She hinted, "If you want to give me milk, you'll have to take something from me in return, so it doesn't feel like charity." I stammered, "What do you want to give me?" She smiled faintly, took my hand and said, "Come to my bedroom and I'll show you." Against my better judgment, I followed her. She led me into her bedroom and pushed me onto the bed. It was winter, but I was sweating profusely. I had never done anything inappropriate with another woman before, and now she had brought me directly into her bedroom. Before I could stop her or understand her intentions, the mistress moved forward, opened her wardrobe, and took something out before coming toward me. My breathing grew heavy, and her beautiful presence in front of me made my heart race as I realized she was trying to fill the void left by her husband through me. While I was still on the bed, she suddenly placed that object into me with her hands. I was utterly shocked. I never thought she would use that object on me. For 4 continuous hours, she kept tying and restraining my hands and feet while repeatedly injecting that substance into me. My screams reached the heavens because I was utterly unprepared for this and couldn't have imagined such an experience. After those 4 hours, when my condition had become critical and I could no longer stand, she finally untied me and revealed something that sent shivers down my spine. My mistress was not divorced, as she had claimed, but a widow who had lied to me. She had come to this neighborhood for a specific purpose, and tonight that purpose was fulfilled. I owned a milk shop, but I also ran another business on the side. It was because of this side business that her husband had died. The mistress, still in her prime, had lost her husband. Initially, she was deeply distressed, but eventually she resolved to seek revenge against the one responsible for his death. That's why she moved into our neighborhood. With her objective in mind, she came to my shop. Once there, she realized that I sold that same substance to other men as well, something that, after prolonged use, destroyed a person's health and led to death. Cleverly, she gained my trust and started ordering the same substance from me. She was an educated woman and sent the substance to a laboratory. After several tests in various labs over the course of a month, she confirmed that this was indeed the substance responsible for her husband's death. Determined to take revenge, she collected the substance and waited for this particular night. Using the pretense of buying milk, she kept me at her house and injected me with the same dangerous drug I had been selling to others for profit. The bulk of my customers at the shop weren't there for milk, but for that substance. A special kind of drug I had created using some herbs and harmful chemicals. It was highly dangerous for human health. However, once someone became addicted, they couldn't stop using it. The mistress's husband had also become addicted after I gave him a free sample, ensuring he got hooked. It was due to overuse of this drug that her husband died. To avenge him, she moved into our neighborhood and, for 4 hours, injected me with numerous doses of that same drug. With such a large amount of the drug entering my system all at once, my screams echoed, but there was no one to help me. I lost all physical strength, even to stand. After explaining everything to me, the mistress called the police. She had already informed them about my activities. The police came and arrested me immediately. They also raided my shop and found a large stash of the narcotic substance. The evidence against me was overwhelming. I was arrested and charged with multiple serious crimes. I had ruined the lives of many men, all for the sake of money. Perhaps that's why I ended up with such a punishment. Now my body is barely functioning because the mistress injected so much of the drug into me during those 4 hours. As a result, many parts of my body have stopped working. My wife knew nothing about any of this. When she finally found out, she left me, taking our 2 daughters back to her family's home. My greed not only destroyed my household, but also caused harm to many other families. I realize this now, but it's too late to change anything. I've ruined both my life here and my afterlife. There are many people like me who, in their greed for money, ruin others' lives. My message to all of them is this: don't destroy your afterlife for the sake of a few fleeting days of profit. Playing with someone else's life is no small matter. Too often, store owners sell harmful drugs solely to make money. They know these substances are dangerous to health, but they continue selling them. As a result, our younger generations are suffering greatly. These substances can even damage men's ability to have children, leaving many families distressed and worried about infertility. People should avoid using such substances and refuse to support those who sell them. Those who have been engaged in this business must not only repent, but also leave these harmful practices behind. If they don't, their fate may be no different from mine. It is time for the government to take strict measures against those who sell such substances. Fear of the law should be enough to stop these harmful drugs from being sold. As a society, we must come together to prevent the sale and use of these substances, ensuring our young generation can grow up healthy and safe. The government and citizens alike must work hand in hand to put an end to this cycle of destruction. Only then can we hope to build a better, healthier future.